How often do you doubt about things? Or when was the last time you actually doubted about something? And what did you do about it? Or now, I'll put something for you to doubt on. Is the COVID or any pandemic that has happened ever in our history, do you think that's real? I don't believe. Because I doubt. No. Because, in 1819 to 1821, there was a recession which was artificially made to acquire lands and all these stuffs for a less money. For whom? I'll tell you. The Second Bank of the United States had enlarged capital of 35 million, and the bank immediately established a large number of branch banks and to lend the fiat money at a compound rates of interest. On 1822, the President James Monroe appointed Nicholas Biddle president of the bank. And what did the Biddle do? He made his first contact with the Rothschilds while on government business in Paris in 1804. As the president of the bank, he acted as the point man to the James Rothschild, who was the bank's investor. Note that they are always on a space where to pull the strings. They make sure they are in control at the end. And then the artificially induced recession on 1819, I told you, on 1819 to 1821, which was very profitable for the bankers. And for the bankers, it is also profitable for the investors. The Rothschild, they were able to buy assets at a depressed price because it is recession, and convinced the leader of Democrats, Andrew Jackson, that the only way to terminate these abuses was to close down the central bank. In his re-election campaign in 1832, he declared that the monster must perish, and his chief slogan was, "Vote Andrew Jackson, no bank." And he stated that if Congress was the right under Constitution to issue paper money, it was given to them to be used by themselves, not to be delegated to individual or corporation. He also said that if the American people only understood the rank injustice of our banking and money system, there would be a revolution before morning. So he understood something, that there is some sort of clique in this monetary system and bank, and he's tried to expose it, which is a good thing. And what could possibly happen now? The people is on Andrew Jackson's side, and they are going to his side. They are listening to what he says, and they are realizing what he says is real. What could happen? The Rothschild actually tried to assassinate Andrew Jackson, which is, common. When you are on top, there is so much enemies, and when it comes to the real top, the Rothschild are the enemies. But Andrew Jackson withstood or overcame that assassination. And when the 20-year charter of the Second Bank of the United States came up for renewal in 1836, Jackson collapsed the bank by withdrawing all government deposits. He promptly repaid the national debt in its entirety, leaving a surplus of 50 million in the treasury, and the central bank was replaced by an independent treasury system based on redeemable paper and specie. And for the next 77 years, the United States developed without the need of a central bank. and it means the exchange were funded primarily by the debt and interest-free treasury. And now, the greenback dollar bills, which was firstly issued by the President Abraham Lincoln on 1862 in order to finance his military expenditure during the Civil War, and gold and silver coins. Up to 1873, gold and silver could be coined at any US mint free of charge. After having rejected offers by private bankers to lend money to the United States government at interest rate varying between 24 to 36% per annum, Lincoln had, on the advice of his friend Colin Dick Taylor, issued 347 million of currency at no cost to the American people except for the expense of printing and distribution. Lincoln, defiance of Lionel Rothschild and his uncle James, resulted in his assassination on the night of 15th April 1865 by John Wilkes Booth, and his real name was Botha, at the behest of the Rothschilds' local agent named Rothberg. Now here starts the real conspiracy. Killing is not really the conspiracy, but how how they shift the roles is a real conspiracy. And Seymour promised payment in specie. However, Seymour wanted payment in specie, and when the convention passed a resolution in favor of paper, Belmont was forced to switch the sides and thereafter secretly support the Republican candidate. And the General Ulysses S. Grant and used his part ownership of the New York World newspaper in order to denigrate and undermine the chance of Seymour. Grant won, and on assuming office in 1869, he promptly introduced the Public Credit Act, which paid out the face value on $5 billion worth of bond in gold. This resulted in the Rothschild and their associates making 100% profit. So now they secretly kill the alpha, everything is down, but they, in order to actually regain the power and possession back, they did all these. How petty, or how greedy about money. They don't consider the value of people or anything. If you are a people's representative or someone like a leader, you should not have that thing, the greed for money. That's the only thing that you should not have. Pathetic rules. And the silver exchange was abolished and replaced by gold standards by the means of Act revising and amending the laws relative to mints, assay office, and the coinage of the United States on 17th January 1873. This act was passed by the Senate. According to the sworn affidavit of Mr. Frederick A. Luckenberg, dated 9th May 1892, he had learned from the Mr. Ernest Said in London and that the demonetization of the American silver had been expressly ordered by the governor of the Bank of England, who had furthermore paid 100,000 pounds in order to have a sufficient number of committee member of the U.S. Congress dealing with the financial matters bribed. The nefarious deed became known as the crime of 1873. So now the money is forcefully, taken, and this abandonment of people's money, silver, was instituted to the German Empire when the government inexplicably ceased to mint the silver thaler coins in 1871. There seems to be a little bit doubt that this was part of the synchronized scheme coordinated by the Rothschild in order to further entrench the gold standard. And the gold standard was beaten up on the American economy and enabled private bankers to withhold loans and restrict the money supply at will, which is literally a pathetic rule, literally a disgusting rule. You know what the idiots do when they get to the rule? They act according to their will, act according to how they feel. They are the real weak men up there. And after that, obviously, what could happen? A series of unnaturally created panics or bank runs in 1873, 1884, 1890 to 91, 1893 94, 1897, 1903, and 1907. Some disasters happen in these days, like recession, depression, inflation, and all those stuffs. These artificially created bank runs so incensed President James Abraham Garfield that shortly after he took office on 4th March 1881, he issued a statement in the middle of June that year he intended to master the problem, and he said the following: whoever controls the volume of money in any country is absolute master of any industry and commerce. And when you realize that the entire system is very easily controlled one way or another by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate. This was the exact words recorded from James Abraham Garfield about the bank and the people on the matrix. And 2 weeks later, obviously this could happen. 2 weeks later, Garfield was gunned down by a lone assassin, Charles J. Guiteau, who had a grievance for not having received a diplomatic posting. That was the reason that he killed him. And some funny thing I saw recently is the Abraham Lincoln's and John F. Kennedy's death. They were clearly assassinated. They were shot on the heart. And I guess for the 2 years ago, even on the internet, you couldn't find who killed him or why was the reason or anything about his death and Abraham Lincoln's death. I clearly remember searching their death dates and why they were killed. It was absolutely a mystery. Now, when you search that, you can see the exact reason, exact person, and he was caught. And how he was caught. So there is something going around. If you clearly try to watch, you'll know. And Garfield did not die immediately, but as a result of improper medical care, obviously, improper medical care, quite possibly done so deliberately, lingered on until his death on 19 September 1881. At his trial, the hidden hand of Rothschild was revealed when Guiteau claimed that important men in Europe put him to the task and had promised to protect him if he were caught. So Guiteau actually stated this. Some important men of Europe appointed him to kill Abraham Garfield, and they promised that they would protect him if anything happens. So this was absolutely a serious conspiracy, a serious murder. When see from the history, it says that if you are telling the truth, you're not the right person. You are a threat to the society. You have to be assassinated. You have to be killed, or you have to be put on a trial or anything, and they kill you. And that assassination or that murder will not be questioned. But the person who told the truth will be questioned, and not the truth will be investigated, or they don't even care about what the person said. Pathetic way of ruling a place. And on 1907, panic had the worst effects. In early 1907, Jacob Schiff, CEO of the Cohen-Loeben Corporation, wondered that unless we have central bank with adequate control of credit resource, this country is going to undergo most severe far-reaching money panic in history. In October of that year, J.P. Morgan and another Rothschild friendman set the panic in. So in order to, regain the rule, they did this. So now they cannot, so now they cannot just come into the country and regain the rule. There should be something. So they introduced the panic, and for the people, they said, or they spread the rumors that its rival, the Knickerbocker Bank and the Trust Corporation, was insolvent. In ensuring the crash shares listed on the New York Stock Exchange lost 50% of their value. And further consequences of the deliberately induced panic were 11% drop in industrial production the following year, a 26% rise in imports, and an increase in unemployment from under 3% to 8%. It was those continual phases of the artificially created boom and bust, inflation and deflation, which provided the motivation and pretext to set up a central bank. They are so they took their small details to spread the rumors, and they immediately act against it, and which would elegantly solve all their never-ending problems for all time. That's what they said. The reintroduction of the central bank would solve all their never-ending problems. And what does it have now? It have nothing. It have a whole bunch of money. It have a fully developed economy with full slaves in it, and people on the top are really enjoying it. Realize now, at least now, think for yourself. God have blessed you with a good brain and a neurosystem to think clearly and act against it. Act accordingly. Stay strong.